This is the I Am Salt Lake podcast, showcasing local talent, professionals, and everyday people making Salt Lake City what it is today.
What's up? How's everybody doing? Welcome to episode 12 of the I Am Salt Lake podcast. My name is Chris Hollifield, and we're recording in beautiful downtown Salt Lake City at Sorry Clementine, located at 366 South, 500 East, number 104. It's in the Ray Building, directly west of Walgreens, right there on 400 South. It's actually my wife's boutique, just opened up. Well, it's actually going to be opening up tomorrow, the 29th of October. Feel free to stop on in. She's open up every day, closed Sunday and Tuesday. Her hours are 11 to 7. Stop on in. Say, hey, you know what? I heard you on the I Am Salt Lake podcast, and check out her handmade clothing because, like the guys in this interview that I do with Project SLC on this episode, they say, you know, there are some cool vibes at that shop. So stop on in there and say what's up and check out her clothing. They make some great holiday gifts. You know, Christmas is right around the corner. I hate to say it, but it is right around the corner, and it's a great place to hit up. So anyways, thank you so much for letting me use your facilities as a recording studio for the podcast. Also, I want to let you know about our website, iamsaltlake.com. It's going to connect you with all the previous episodes that have been put out for the podcast. And go ahead and download those. The link for iTunes is right there as well. I do want to mention, thank you so much, Christian and the Blues End Band as well, for letting me use some of their music there. If you noticed, I got a new intro to the podcast, so I thought that fit in there pretty well. So thank you so much, Christian, for letting me use your music. It means a lot to me. I just kind of want to keep this podcast as local as possible. So I figured, you know what? Why not use a local band's music? So thank you so much. Anyways, wow, Halloween is in a few days, and I hope you guys are all ready to take your kids out trick-or-treating. It's supposed to be a beautiful day. Last night, I actually had an opportunity to go over to Castle of Chaos over there in Taylorsville. We had some passes to check it out. We did the Extreme Touching, and it's been a while since I've done a haunted house. And my wife and some friends of ours, we went over there, and it was fun. It's definitely worth the energy and the money to go check it out. And so thanks a lot, Castle of Chaos, for adding to my Halloween season. So anyways, like I mentioned, and like the website says, this episode we're talking with folks over at Project SLC, projectslc.com. I've kind of found out a little bit more about them. I didn't know too much about them. I've seen them kind of here and there on the internet offering some really extensive calendar listings of some bands that are coming to town, you know, national and local. They have some interviews up as well. So I had an opportunity to sit down with them and get to know them a little bit better and find out what Project SLC is all about and what you can expect from them in the future. So, hey, thanks a lot, guys, for coming on the show. I don't really want to give away too much. I just kind of want to jump right into the conversation. Go ahead and check out the show notes over at iamsaltlake.com and add them on Facebook and Twitter. They're always posting new stuff up on there as well. So add them on Facebook and Twitter, and as well as Instagram. They're on there. So anyways, thanks a lot, Project SLC, for being guests on the show. If you just discovered this podcast, thank you so much. Tell a friend about it because I'm trying to get the word out there. And leave us a review on iTunes because that really helps us out getting the exposure that we need. So anyways, this is episode 12 of the I Am Salt Lake podcast. Let's jump right into the conversation I had with the guys over at Project SLC. All right, so we're here recording, talking with Justin and Scott of Project SLC. Give me a little introduction, the typical introduction of how the idea of Project SLC even came to be.
Well, first off, thank you for having us.
Absolutely.
It's an honor to be here in your wife's shop. So for those of you listening, when this actually opens, you definitely got to come and check out Sorry Clementine because I'm really digging the vibe here. But the idea pretty much came around from our friend Chase Strait, who at the time was living in New York City, and he was running his own music blog there. And it's actually a really good blog. He's still doing it, this time out of San Francisco because he moved, but it's Electropandic Music. And he pretty much was coming back to Utah to come and visit, and he wanted to catch a show while he was here. And he noticed that there really wasn't a website where he could have everything in one spot to see what was going on. You had to go to a variety of places, either to the venues or to the promoters, because it was kind of a fend for yourself.
Yeah.
And so he approached Justin and told Justin that, hey, you should do a blog that kind of consolidates everything that's happening in the Utah music scene. So it's a one-stop shop, basically. And Justin really liked the idea and was kind enough to involve me in it. He approached me knowing that I'm a huge music enthusiast as well, and said, this is what Chase came up with and something I really am interested in doing. What do you think about it? And so Justin kind of started it on himself first, and you got a WordPress, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. The WordPress, the original thing is still on there. When we started with WordPress, and we were Utah Live at WordPress, and then you couldn't get UtahLive.com. So you got UtahLive.wordpress, which is still around if you go to it, and you can see like where we started. And so from there we transferred to a whole nother setup, and I started to do the calendar. And I found a calendar where you can actually go on, you click on it, you can load a YouTube video, you can load, ticket links, and then we just started. Nobody sends us their shows even now. We go 24 Ticks, Smith Ticks, Urban Lounge, Kilby Court, Woodshed, Bar Deluxe, all of these places. We actually go to their websites and find all of their music that's being played, and we load it up ourselves.
Wow.
And so it started with just me spotlighting one band a day that was coming in,
Mm-hmm.
and then I realized that I was missing a very large variety of what was going on. I don't listen to a ton of metal, and so I was missing a lot of things that were playing up north in Ogden. And so it was one of those things where I said, okay, we're going to start doing something daily and loading each one up and loading a song from each, within the next 2 days that are coming up. And I said, well, how do we draw people to this? Because if we just make this site and don't have any way to get people to it, no one's going to ever find out about it. You can network as much as you want, but until people start seeing it, you're not going anywhere. And so we started to try and get interviews with both local and national bands.
Yeah.
And, little did they know we were two guys working out of our houses, emailing them saying, we'd love to meet with you guys. And slowly but surely we started to meet with bands, enough big name bands where people can look at what we've done and they can say, okay, they've worked with Henry Rollins, they've worked with the Bouncing Souls, they've gone to Uproar or whatever it is. We'll work with them. And so we've got a web developer and a graphic designer that are going to kind of tweak some things. And that way we can get a legitimate site now. And so, yeah, we switched over the name and switched over to a site and kind of...
So you guys have been friends for quite a while then? Or
we knew each other back in high school, actually.
Okay.
Justin's a year older than me as far as our graduating classes are concerned. It actually wasn't until Justin returned from serving an LDS mission that we really were attached to the hip. Just to show you how much we love music. The day that Justin got home from his mission, my friend Todd and I, we wanted to go see Finch, which was this band that we really loved in high school, and they happened to be playing the same day that he got home. So there we were at the airport. He's seeing his family for the first time in 2 years, and jokingly we said, "Hey Justin, you want to go see Finch?" And he's like, "Yeah, I just need to get released first." And there he was. He got released, and we were at a concert that night. And so we've been friends for a while now. And but like he was saying, is when we were in high school, it's always like this trend to you want to discover new bands for yourself, so you can kind of go to school and gloat and be like, I'm the first guy to know who these guys were.
Yeah.
And we wish that we had our own website back then, because Justin created this brilliant idea to have a means to do that, to get on that calendar and click a name that you're not familiar with and hear their music. There's so many bands that I've discovered that I now am a huge follower of that I wouldn't have ever noticed if it wasn't for the website and us actually going and seeking them out, finding what they what they sound like and stuff like that. So Justin, when we started kind of figuring out who was coming and stuff like that, you go to a place like Polestar or something, and all it is just names on a screen. You don't know what they sound like. And that's when he really came up with that unique niche for the calendar, per se, to have a means to discover new music and stuff like that.
I would literally look up the bands that I saw coming and then go to YouTube and type up their name. You know, one of the first ones was Macklemore. It's coming in December. He was one of the first people, you know, the Joy Formidable, like bands that I had never heard of that were coming through. They were playing Kilby Court. You know, I know that I usually like the bands playing Kilby Court or Urban Lounge or wherever it is. So I would plug them in and I would go through their YouTube videos and I was like, there's got to be a better way to do this. And so when the whole idea came about, that was the first thing I was going to do, is make it where you could see a band, you could hear them, and you could buy tickets all in the same place. Mm-hmm. And it didn't matter. You know, we're not getting sponsored by Smith Ticks. We're not getting sponsored by 24 Ticks. So we don't have to do one vendor. You know, we can do Ticket Cake. We can do wherever it is. We can sell straight from the stateroom, because, you know, we don't get anything for it and we're not getting sponsors from any of them. So we're free to basically do whatever we want.
So somebody who isn't familiar with Project SLC, you go to projectslc.com. Mm-hmm. You can go on there. They show a calendar, which I'll tell you is the most interactive, extensive calendar that I've seen.
Thank you.
There's interviews on there with national and local bands. What else is on the site? What else?
Well, outside of the calendar and the interviews, we are not to step on anyone in the state's toes, as we've recently just talked about prior to this interview starting, but kind of having a slight more of a press feel, mm-hmm. just because we find that working with management groups and publicity groups for these bands, if they can't arrange an interview, they would still like press. Market for the Salt Lake City market. The market here is still booming, relatively untapped for a lot of these national touring bands, and so we're starting to introduce more of going to concerts and reviewing, not necessarily to the extent of Slug or City Weekly, but another addition for people to discover new music and stuff like that.
There's several things that are going to be happening in the next couple months. We take a lot of photos, we get a lot of photo passes, and we're just trying to look. We load them a lot to our Facebook. It's facebook.com/projectslc, and we have a lot of them on there, but we're trying to get our watermark down. So, you know, we went to Taking Back Sunday and had press passes to that. We went to Uproar and had press passes to that. And so we're kind of waiting to unload all of those. But the other things you can find out who we are, you know, what we're doing and why we're doing it. You can find our sponsors page, so you know who's helping us out, who throws us, you know, free tickets, or who's, you know, setting us up with dinners for the bands or drinks for the bands, and just different stuff like that. You know, the Collective has helped us out a ton by giving us tickets. Jeff Hacker and the Metro Bar have helped us out a ton by us being able to bring bands there and them taking very good care of them. Even when it's, you know, we leave at 12:30 and they're still there partying with the bands, and, you know, that's something we know and we can trust them. We can leave them there and, you know, they're not going to run the bands off. Oh Shucks, we go there and get sushi about twice every month, you know, with the bands, and they love having the bands in there. And
Bruce Corrigan and
Bruce,
Christy.
Yeah, Christy, the manager there, was ready to boot some people out last time we were there, so we could all sit down and relax. And
nice.
They're just awesome. And so all of those people, Rick Shoes has hooked us up. He's with Utah Concerts, and Mike Sartain and Sean Cochran with GigViz have streamed some of our interviews. They're really cool guys. And so, I mean, we've just got in touch with these companies that are kind of doing the same thing. You know, you here with I Am Salt Lake, that are just saying, what are you guys doing? We're really interested in this. And a lot of that we've linked. But then you can find out more of what we're trying to transition into, and that's a nonprofit. Yeah. You know, we really want to take this nonprofit.
Talk a little bit about that nonprofit. I noticed that on your website, how you're looking to raise. Have you raised the funds for that then, or are you still in the process?
We haven't started yet.
Yeah,
we're making sure.
Okay.
We're making sure everything's in order before we move forward. And the one thing that we want to fix is we want a new watermark. So we'll most likely keep the name is what it looks like, but we want a new watermark, and we want...
what do you mean a watermark?
Like a watermark, so a logo. Where people see it and they say, that's what that is.
I got
And so we have the things that we're using now, but they're almost like temporary Band-Aids, where, you know, we're going to unveil the new website, we're going to unveil the logo that we're going to have from now on, you know, for as long as we do this, which hopefully is a long time. And when we get that together, then we're going to put together, you know, a Kickstarter. We've got Hectic Hobo, who just met with you just a little bit ago, donated a song for us to do a compilation. So we have 2 compilations. We've got some T-shirts. We've got all this stuff ready. We're just waiting for our website and everything to be done, and then we'll release it to raise the funds. We need $850 to to fill out the forms to turn in to get our nonprofit status.
And what would be the purpose? What is? I'm unfamiliar with what the purpose even of a nonprofit. Like, what would be the benefits?
Truth be told, at this very moment, we're kind of having an identity crisis, to be very honest.
No, you're fine.
But that's
I didn't want to really admit.
which I guess isn't professional to admit, but that's what I like about this podcast, because as we were talking about, it's fun to go back and listen to the very first I Am Salt Lake podcast and then see how you've progressed to here.
Oh gosh, it's embarrassing,
and
kind of.
Exactly. But at the same time, it's nice to see that progress.
Absolutely.
And the same for us, like we were saying, is our first interviews were something else.
Yeah.
And to where we are now is there's been a lot of progress. Conceptually, what we've talked about is we want Project SLC to be the one-stop shop for the Utah music scene. So the mission idea would be to organize, coordinate, and unite the Salt Lake music scene, i.e. Utah, and because you have Provo and guys like Corey Fox who've done great things with Velour Music Gallery and Muse Music down there, and then you also have Mojo up in Ogden and Y Sound up in Logan. The state in and of itself is doing great things, and we want to organize it so we're all working together, like what we were talking about, how like what you do with your podcast, you go and you give credit to people who are working very hard to do these things that often go unnoticed for the state or for the city. So conceptually, like what we'd like to do is have it be something that organizes, coordinates, unites, promotes, and gives opportunities for the music scene in general, but more in particularly, we've been kind of specifically talking about getting funds to underfunded school districts' arts and music programs. We want to basically get instruments in kids' hands and give them a means, or not even instruments, but a paintbrush or writing, whatever it is, whatever they want to do, video camera, photography, get that in their hands and let them explore that side as they continue to develop. But we often like to equate it as a collegiate system for sports. So you start playing football, and pee-wee football, and then you start playing as you're going on up, and you're in junior high, and then you get to high school, and you play for your high school team. But it's like, where do you go when you graduate? Well, if you're lucky, you get to go to a college, and you get to play for a college team, and maybe even play professionally. We kind of want that with the art and music scene here in the state, where they can get a violin or whatever it is and start at a very early age, and once they graduate, have something to go into to continue pursuing their love for music or art or whatever it is. And it's kind of the idea that we're tossing around. What we're trying to do right now, though, is how are we specifically going to do that? And we've been talking for months on end at this point.
And maybe we mentioned at the beginning of it, but how long has this project of yours? I mean, what?
7 months.
About 7 months
okay,
now.
Okay, yeah. And again, we might have talked about it in the beginning.
So 7 months from like the beginning. The old site we don't necessarily count because, you unless you go find it, it doesn't necessarily exist.
Well, I'm gonna go look for it now.
Yeah, but it's there, and you can see how far. And that's why I even talk about it. But like you said, the whole point is for federally funded school districts to get some kind of financing for their arts and music programs. Utah is the second, lowest in government funding back to education. And so the first things that go are always arts and music. And you've got all kinds of people that want to help out, and then you've got organizations, national organizations, and that's where the identity crisis comes in, because of the national organizations that we would love to get involved with, that, when you have something that's hyper-local, such as Project SLC, it's harder to take it on a national level. But we're really focused on Salt Lake City, the federal school districts here. My mother's, was a high school teacher and now teaches at Weaver State. My sister's a teacher. My brother works for the school district. It's just one of those things that they've been involved so long with the schooling, and we all came up through that we really want to give back, but not only give back to the music programs, but provide people, if they don't want to play music, provide them with the opportunity to learn how to record so they can graduate and say, I know how to go to a recording studio, or I know how to be a photographer's assistant, or I know how to do these things, rather than just, I play a guitar. If I don't make it big in a band, that's all I've got, or something to that effect, or at least be good enough at the guitar that they feel that they can do that, and that they can give it their all. But so they actually have these opportunities to learn from a young age and graduate and say, I have these skills, and now I can use these skills to better the local economy, the local state, whatever it might be at that time.
And we feel that they need a well-organized scene to come in to do that, to come with these skill sets and have a means to actually...
Kind of like a main hub, like
Exactly.
you were saying.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you mentioned art, something like, I mean, do you see yourself going further than music at all? Or do you see maybe trying, I mean, even, hey, we're at a sewing play. I mean, maybe sewing, crafts. I mean, where do you see this going?
As of right now, we've learned from many other business ventures that we've seen come and go that you need to have a firm foundation of what you're doing before you branch out too far or you leave enough cracks that it just kind of crumbles. So as of right now, we're making sure that our base is in music, and only in music at this point. As soon as we feel comfortable enough, and even if we have some extra income, I know about art, but nowhere near as much about art as somebody else does, or someone in the art scene. So what we would love to do is when we're ready for that point is to actually bring somebody in that can take care of that aspect of that. But as of right now, we have to make sure our foundation's good where we're at with music, and then eventually, we have a lot of plans coming up, but it's making sure that we have the transition, we have the nonprofit, we have a good first year of whatever, first fundraiser or first whatever it is, and then from there we can say we have these extra funds or this worked like this, let's make a committee to do this now or whatever it might be. But
and that's the best thing about music is music can, even if we don't necessarily branch out ever, music can be so diverse and helping a million different causes. And you have several great things that people within the city or within the state are already doing, like Craft Lake City and stuff like that, we don't necessarily want to step on their toes, but use our resources to help them as much as we can, just like this shop here, for example. This is a beautiful shop. I honestly, not just because he's the one interviewing us, but I really dig the vibe that is here to know these are all handcrafted clothing. And obviously music and our resources can help something like this.
Yeah.
And that's the whole point, to do good for our community.
I don't think, I think Salt Lake City is big enough for multiple things. When you mentioned stepping on people's toes, I don't really think that, I think Salt Lake City is big enough to have multiple similar things.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, that's why, I think what you guys have is it can be seen as, okay, well, maybe that's already out there. You can go look at calendar. But you have the most extensive calendar. You have the most, the best resources for local bands. Get the best photos. You get the best, of everything, and kind of have that main hub. And do you guys have like a forum on there at all? I think that'd be kind of fun.
Not
to
yet.
have something like
there's
that,
a lot of
where
things
people go on there and have some discussions, maybe.
We've discussed. I spent a lot of time on Reddit.
Oh,
and so
I love Reddit.
That's kind of where we go. And luckily enough, that's worked out well for us in the last little bit.
Yeah.
But it's one of those things. We would love to work with the people that are already doing it to help out in which way we can or to help promote that.
Yeah.
But rather than, I'm never going to come up with a thing at Craft Lake City and say, here, I've made these, you should come see this. But if someone said, hey, can you help with Craft Lake City? Would you like to set up a booth or would you like to do this? Absolutely, we would go do that. Yeah. So not step on toes as in...
Right.
But no, I know what you mean. I absolutely
We don't want to come across like we're trying to monopolize the stage.
Absolutely.
So more of what it is we like to stick to this, but we would love to branch out also. But we would branch out when people say, hey, we really like what you're doing. How would you like to get involved in this? Here's the idea that we have for you. And we'd say, cool, that's a perfect idea. We will now take that, make it our own, and then help you with whatever you're doing. And so, we've done it before. The Shred Shed just opened up, and a lot of it's right across the street from where I actually work. I went over, took some pictures, put it on Instagram, that kind of stuff, to make sure that they saw that we were helping them out. I walked in, and Jesse Kassar was in there, the owner of it, and he was like, if you guys ever need a booth that you want to set up here, let us know. We donated to their Kickstarter. It's just one of those things where there's just this joint effort to kind of push that forward. And we have absolutely every intention to help as many people as we possibly can that approach us and say, hey, we have this idea. Could you help us with this? We're going to help the local lounge down on Weber 88.1 to do a food drive. And they just, friends that we've made that say, hey, we have this idea. Can you please help us with this? And, we'll put advertising on our website if you guys, help us out or whatever it is. And that's basically how we've done everything so far. And that's kind of how we imagine it going forward. So like getting to arts and music's programs, what I would probably do is go down to the Utah Fine Arts or down to the Arts Commission and say, hey, we need artists to put in schools to help these kids paint. We've got a grant that says we have this much. Do you have these artists so we might be able to pay to do this? And they would say, absolutely. The next time you do this, contact us in advance. And then we would go forward like that. And so, I'm never going to be the guy teaching people to paint. You should see the doodles I've done for our website, man. They're terrible. I mean, my nieces and nephews who are like 5 and 6 are doing better than I am. But, I mean, Utah in general is doing some very great things, even outside of just music. Hooligan Stencils out in Provo is doing awesome. You've got like the bike collectives that are going on, the Provo Bike Collective. You've got the Salt Lake Ride and Share. I mean, Salt Lake has got what they're doing together. And the fact that we can even have people approach us and say, hey, we like what you're doing. Now here's what I'm doing. And we can say, awesome. We're trying to reach Fur Turtle Design right now. He does a lot of the vinyl posters for a lot of the bands that are coming through for Kilby Court and Urban to try and work something out with them. Dan Nalen with Salt Lake Tribune. No. SLC Inster. Sorry, SLC Inster.
Okay, yeah.
I just approached him on Twitter. I'm thinking Burger. Yeah. With Burger and Relish is SL Tribune, so I apologize about that. But I mean, all of these guys now that we are prominent enough that we can actually approach and say, hey, we'd love to work with you, or we'd love to, do these things. Post some of your reviews on our website because we haven't written any reviews as of right now.
Yeah.
Because there's so many review places out there that, until we're ready to really make a statement with what we're doing. The calendar, the nonprofit will stay where they're at until we are ready to say, here's our review, here are our photos, here's what we're doing, and it stacks up exactly the same, if not better, with what's already out there. Because if you make a subpar product, why would they come to you when they can go to something that's already better?
Yeah.
We've got a pretty confident business plan. We think of things in phases is how we're going to release and progress. So the immediate thing that'll happen basically from this point on is the fine-tuning. All the specifics are getting settled out right now between Justin and I, plus our graphic designer and our website developer. At this point, we're expecting a launch date later in the year, if not the start of next year. And like Justin already mentioned, local bands were very, very kind to donate a song for us to put together these compilations that Justin...
Are you still looking for bands to donate songs?
We will put together another one. Anyone listening to this, we're absolutely...
Yeah, I was going to say, if anybody's listening, maybe look you up.
And I feel bad because there's about 21 songs we're just sitting on. They sent them to us. We have them. A lot of us have contracts, and now we're just sitting on them. And so
these actual compilations will actually come out relatively soon. I don't want to seem like those are going to be pushed back to the end of the year, but just kind of within this next period of time. But amazing bands like the Mighty Sequoia, who I'm a big fan of. There's a ton of them.
Anarchist, Muscle Hawks on there, Malik, King Nico.
There's tons. Just amazing talent from our own state, and they were very gracious to give us these songs. And so the sticker packs, the CDs, and the shirts will kind of be like the first thing coming out to help us raise funds, along with whatever we're going to do with the Kickstarter. We're still kind of working on right now. And then, like Justin said, also with the unveiling of the official watermark and then the finalized website. From there, we want to grow steadily, but some of our end goals are to eventually get very, very nice video recording equipment. And instead of doing audio recordings, we want to start filming our interviews and then also doing maybe like an acoustic set or maybe catching one of their songs from their actual live show. And the idea is we want to showcase local businesses and local artists next to national touring artists. So you might have this national touring band who sounds a lot like this local band. And we want to use that website, our website, to make that connection that you can, if you like these guys, well, you should listen to what's in your own backyard right here. Yeah. But more importantly, an idea would be to have one of our artists that we're going to interview come to a place like this, like Sorry Clementine, and do an acoustic song here in the interview here to not only showcase this business and help a local business and our community. It's kind of the idea, basically. And so that's kind of the next thing is what we want to start doing. And then from there, we've even talked about This is a way was down the road, but we would like to have our own place to start recording. And the idea is kind of to bring artists in there and then start doing streaming. So they would play a set there, and we would interview them, and we'd be doing that, but also utilizing that same space for recording as well. So those kids that are coming out of high school can come and have a place to do that.
Or to like record a CD or something like that.
Or even fundraisers. So we've got this 2-part system. I don't play any music. I don't play any kind of instruments. I'm not musically inclined whatsoever. So when it comes to the music aspects, a lot of times Scott comes up with the ideas of, this is where I would like to take things and musically. I think more of the nonprofit type of processes. And so it works really well because we work together and we say, this is where we want this to go, and this is how we can phase it in, both of them together. You know, I want to do Battle of the Bands with high schools where we actually would go to a musician's friend that's here in Utah, or we would go to a guitar center and say, hey, you know, this school, if they can raise this much, will you match that in musical instruments? And, you know, they say yes, and then that school raises so much money, you know, and we get the donation matched by whoever is willing to do that. And then those schools are going to get new instruments, or they get new art, or whatever it might be. And then from there, you can actually, if we did get a recording studio, you can get the kids into the studio, and they could actually make some kind of school CD that could be sold to parents and whatever else to fundraise for the school. You know, there's all of these things, that everything that we want musically, with these compilations, with recording artists, with whatever it might be, you know, we want to implement that in so the local scene can use it also. So we can say, you know, a band might send us their stuff and say, yeah, we're really interested in recording something, but we don't have the money to do it. And we've raised funds through grants and through whatever, you know, and through fundraising, that we can actually have them in and help them record something to put out because they might not have the money to do it. Or, you know, high school bands, you know, can come in and have someone who has recording experience really show them, you know, the ropes on how it works, so they don't walk into some recording studio and just scared out of their minds, that they might actually understand, you know, the process of it. We talked to all these national bands and say, first time I went into a recording studio, I got pushed around so much that, you know, whatever came out was not what we wanted to come out. And of course, you have
lost
other
money.
Yeah, and they've lost, and not only they've lost money, but the recording studios have thrown tons of money into this. And so, you know, we're trying to prevent that. You know, obviously there's recording studios that help out a lot, but there's a lot of things that these musicians, now that we speak to them, national musicians that have either are on the brink of making it big, or have made it big and, you know, are now nobodies again, or whatever it might be, you know, they each had something that they could share that could easily be implemented into everything else and could be prevented, really. In the long run. And so it's one of those things that we're trying to do. I mean, it's a 2-step system. We have all of these plans on the music side, but we also want to implement that in with the nonprofit, and that's where the nonprofit comes in. So these kids have new instruments or new art supplies or new photography supplies, but then the local businesses are also being able to donate. And that's one of the other things with, you know, the nonprofit. When people donate, or when we get advertisers, that's free advertisement. They can use that as a tax write-off. And that to them, you know, they get advertising that people are going to see, that they're helping the local scene, whatever it might be. But they can also do that relatively free. And so that's kind of the concept of it.
Which is where the identity crisis is coming, because we're trying to get that, we're trying to figure out how to get that catch-all umbrella for everything that we want to do. And that's kind of been our struggle right now. Is so there's been a lot of business meetings, some productive, some not productive. And just trying to figure out how to get that catch-all umbrella to make sure that we stay within the legality of a nonprofit organization, but as well as making sure that we all are happy with the product and the idea on the same sheet of music, to make sure that we're helping the community the way that we want to and stuff like that. So
let's talk a little bit about the local music scene.
All right.
Love to.
You know, and which obviously that's right up you guys' alley. You mentioned Provo and Ogden, which lately I've noticed incredible bands coming out of Provo.
Yeah.
Salt Lake too.
Well, yeah, Salt Lake City, excellent bands coming out of Salt Lake. But do you find that one thing I've noticed is it's like, oh, I don't want to drive to Provo. Provo's so far. Well, I don't want to drive to Ogden, but it's like, gosh, you know, they're not very far at all. I mean, do you think Do you think people are realizing that? Do you see more unity with that? I mean, just curiosity
I think Utah's spoiled.
Yeah.
I don't. Anyone that's lived outside of Utah realizes how far you have to drive to a venue, or how willing you are to drive to a venue. When I went out, I visited a good buddy of mine, Chase, same kid that helped us with this, out in New York, and we saw so many different shows. And every night I was there for 4 days, we saw a different show because you could take the subway wherever you were going. But I mean, we were taking hour and a half trips out to where we were going, and then hour and a half trips back. We didn't even have our own cars. And so we noticed when we started doing this, we were out in Provo a lot because of all the great music that's coming out of there. And we realized that when we were in Provo, we saw the same people. And when we came out to Salt Lake, we would see the same people, but you hardly saw them in both places. And one of the biggest things that a lot of people talked about is, especially musicians, that they wanted to unite that. Because a lot of the fans in Provo can't come to Salt Lake because there's not an all-ages venue. You know, they bring in enough people that they can't play at Kilby Court, but at Urban Lounge, they can't. The crowd's not big enough because a lot of their fans are, 18 to 20 or whatever it might be. And so that's one of the biggest gripes, one of the biggest complaints is that they have to play in a bar and a lot of their fans can't make it in. And so Ogden to me has great music, but it's a different music scene. It's a lot more of the metal shows, a lot more of the hardcore shows or post-hardcore, however you want to genre it.
Some pop punk from the high school.
Yeah, a little bit of pop punk, but they're doing very well. Rick Shoes has a lot of shows out there, and he's doing very well in growing that scene. But you have, it's almost completely different. Ogden, you have the metal shows. Salt Lake, you have a lot of the indie or still kind of the rock. And then Provo, you have a lot of folk and indie things. And so they seem to be a lot different markets. But that's, back to your question, one of the things that we really want to do is try and show people, Provo is a lot cooler than you think, and then we want to show the people in Provo that
Salt Lake is
that
cool
you guys are accepted in Salt Lake because it's music. That no one knows that you're from Provo when you come down here. No one cares that you're from Provo when you're down here. You're all celebrating music in one place, and the fact that you guys can be united by this is the biggest point, because it seems that everyone says, "Oh, Provo, I don't want to go to Provo," or "Oh, Salt Lake."
It's always the sports rivalry that mentality comes in.
And maybe that's what
Provo,
it is.
BYU, a particular religious group that we might have disdain for. So they have these stereotypes and these already preconceived ideas about them, and then vice versa. And the thing is, though, is when you're listening to a band that you both like no one cares what your religious beliefs are, your political beliefs, what city you come from, or anything like that. Like, you're there, united under this umbrella of music and for the love of music, and that only. And that we want people to realize that it's worth that 30 to 45 minute drive from Provo to Salt Lake, or vice versa back to Provo, to just to celebrate something like music, the beauty of it. I look at our friends, and for example, I told my best friend about the Mighty Sequoia, and she's like, "Oh man, that's a hour 15-minute drive from Layton to Provo," but he took my word for it, came down, loved the band, and now every time I'm like, "Hey, I've got to go down here to check this band out. Do you guys want to come?" They're more than willing to make that drive because of the experience that they had there. The Velour is an awesome music venue. Same with Muse Music down there as well, but the bands are very, very talented, and they, it's like kind of going on a little road trip within your own state, a little mini vacation over the weekend, or vice versa, coming to Salt Lake. There's amazing groups.
Well, I think even maybe once like the front runner maybe gets
exactly.
put in, people there'll be that, okay, I just hop on the front runner and go to Salt Lake or vice versa.
It's done a great deal connecting.
The hard part is too, I think, is one of the things I've learned going to, say, a Taking Back Sunday concert, or like the XX that just played. Those two were basically sold out, which means you've brought in all parts of Utah. For two shows in Salt Lake to sell out at the same time is a big deal.
Oh, so those are going on the same night?
Those are going on the same night. And so they both, Taking Back Sunday was pretty close to selling out in the venue, and the Depots, it was
Complex.
The Complex. The Complex is gigantic. So the fact that they sold out the XX, like that shows that there's enough people wanting to see the music. I think a lot of it is exposure for the local bands.
Exactly.
I don't think a lot of people understand how good the local music is. And so when you have mostly local bands playing out of Velour and Provo, even though it's in Salt Lake, it's the best venue I've been to. By far the coolest place I've walked into to watch a show. And so it's weird that it's just like this hidden gem, because a lot of it's local shows. I mean, in Provo, they sell out every acoustic night that they have. Every Wednesday they have acoustic, and then I think Muse is on Thursday. And every time, people have to pay to play, and they sell out how many seats they have, and they sell out how many bands can play every single week.
Wow.
And it's just one of those things that I didn't understand, being from Salt Lake and spending most of my time in Salt Lake, what's going on out there. And and as soon as that actually becomes this, people start to see how good local music is, and we discuss this all the time. When we were in high school, when you listened to a local band, it sounded like they recorded in their basement, and they were going to the best recording studios that you had in Salt Lake. And you listen to it now, and people are recording in their basement, and it sounds as good as anything you're getting from anywhere else on iTunes. And it's so amazing, when you go to Provo, they know the Provo bands. They know them. They know Fictionists. They know Imagine Dragons. They know The Moth and the Flame. They obviously know Neon Trees, Joshua James. They know them. If they're from Provo, Provo knows who they are. If you come to Salt Lake, a lot of them aren't familiar, but they know the Max Paynes and the Groovies. They know the Starmies. They know the Folk Hogans and the Hector Cobos.
But their interesting thing is, though, is, like you said, different markets. But, again, it goes for people failing to realize how good the market is for everyone. Because, like he said, Provo has this really big following of folk and indie. But you come to Salt Lake and you can see the Polka Dots or Hope and Tim, and to this day,
Triggers and Slips.
Yeah, Triggers and Slips. One of my favorite concerts that I went to was at Urban Lounge, was to see the Polka Dots, and they played with Hope and Tim, and then Asher Sevick, and there's another person whose name's escaping me at this moment. But all the music that the Provo scene would have liked, they could have. They also have these bands here that are relatively unknown for them and that they could very much enjoy just as much. So the idea is to unite the state and cross promote these different markets and get people coming from Provo to Salt Lake and up to.
Well, that's even what I'd like to see with my podcast is to promote businesses.
Mm-hmm.
Really, I mean everything makes up everything. I mean, where does Salt Lake end? I mean, you got West Valley, you have Kearns. I mean, you have all these other little cities that aren't technically that's not technically Salt Lake City,
right.
but it's like everything integrates together.
Yeah.
Well,
and if it wasn't for these other places, we wouldn't survive either here.
You look at all the great cities, though, like Seattle or Boston or New York. Something that you and I were talking about prior to this was our love for not only our city but our state.
Yeah.
I joined the military right out of high school, and I've had the opportunity to travel abroad and see the world and see some other not so good things. But I always ran into people, and they're like, "Oh, what's so great about Utah?"
Yeah.
We have this negative connotation that we have no nightlife and that we have no culture, or we have no vibrant music scene or things like this. And it's not the case at all. Like, we have so much of that. It's beautiful. It's something we should all be very proud of. But something I've always admired about cities like Seattle and Boston and stuff like that is that they're very, very, very proud to be from their city, from Seattle or from Boston. People will wear that on their sleeve. And I'm starting to see that Salt Lake is starting to get that way, that we're starting to be very proud of ourselves and what we're doing here. And we want to be we want to help contribute to that pride to have in our own city and our own friends and the state as a whole and stuff like that. So musically speaking, like, there's a lot to be very, very proud of.
Yeah.
And again, to go on what you mentioned, they said that brought this point up was, where does Boston end? There's so many subsections of Boston and New York or Seattle that, it's grouped under Seattle.
Yeah.
But, like, Seattle isn't just the heart of downtown. There's lots of places outside of it, just like in Boston, all these sub-cities and things. And just like you said, where does Salt Lake really end? To be prideful in it and stuff like that. So.
What do you say to people? I mean, that say, "Oh, there's never anything to do." You say, "Go over to our website."
Yeah.
I mean, for real though, I think it is changing. I think people are getting, and that's even what I'm trying to show. It's like, what, Salt Lake City, you need to be proud to live here. I mean, I've lived in a few other cities, West Coast, East Coast. I mean, even down to our parking here, people say, "Oh, it needs to be all free parking." It's like, so you got to pay a couple bucks. Other cities, you got to pay $10, $20 to park 30 minutes.
Exactly.
You're paying $2 every
and people are so quick to complain. It's like, well, then get out and do something like you guys are doing. And that's what I want to showcase. It's like, hey, there are people that are trying. Let's have fun here.
Well, the cool part is you get a national band and they say, "Oh, it's a Tuesday night. We're not, too concerned about the turnout." And then they have, not only more than they expected, but they've got people that are there singing every one of their songs. And this is the second time they've been through Utah, the first time they've been through Utah, and it blows them away. We take these bands out to sushi or hang out with them after the show, and they say, this is our first time through Salt Lake City, and we didn't expect a turnout like this. It's Tuesday or it's Wednesday. And, we've been to shows where we're, the only fans. But nonetheless... I mean, they're always impressed. Taking Back Sunday came through and they said, this is the best turnout and the best audience that we've had since we've been on tour. And you can tell that they truly mean it. It's not like hey, Salt Lake City, like, hey, where are we? It's like you see their faces and they're like, wow, like, we didn't expect this out of Salt Lake. And we have that for national bands. And we're so prideful about our state for each person that's here, whether they're from Provo or Ogden. Everyone's just so prideful about how awesome Utah is that they love to be in the know about national bands and be ahead of the indie circuit or ahead of the metal circuit or whatever it is, but they're missing what we have here in Utah. And I think as soon as they grasp that, that's when things will change and people will be driving from place to place to actually see them. The other hard part is that I've noticed is they'll play in Provo early in the month, and they'll play in Salt Lake later in the month. And so it's like, I'll just catch them when they come to Salt Lake. And so, driving out, and that also causes a little bit of difficulty.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So you guys are staying pretty busy, going to a lot of shows, a lot of concerts. I mean, what do you guys do outside? I mean, do you have any other hobbies or interests, or is it music kind of consuming you right now?
I got married about 2 months ago. That's been good.
Oh, you got married?
I got married, yes.
Well, congratulations.
Yes, my beautiful wife has helped me a lot. She just got a new job up in Layton, and so that's consuming us a little bit. I have a real job, and both of us go to school. And so I work at 9 to 5, go to school 9 to 5, and then catch concerts at 5 to whatever time. So
that's the biggest joke between each other is we always look at each other when we're at Urban Lounge, and I have a class early in the morning, and I'm there till like 12:30 or 1 o'clock in the morning.
Goes on at 1 o'clock in the morning, yeah.
And we're looking at each other, man, I can't wait to start getting paid for this. Yeah. That's like our biggest joke.
Yeah.
But just like Justin said, he got married, and his wife is wonderful. She's been very supportive, letting him come and do these things without necessarily...
Letting me.
Bring some
no, I'll tell you, there are some wives out there that it's like they have a tight leash on their,
Yeah.
Well, she's awesome.
They're
a lot of
attached
times
to the hip.
She'll take photos for us sometimes. When we want to watch the show, that's how I get her to come out. She's really good. When Scott's out of town and I don't want to go somewhere alone, I always feel bad because I always have someone to take with me, even if Scott can't go. Poor Scott has to go alone when I can't be there. So it's always interesting. So I can't complain at all.
No, she's been great in the sense that she's got a really charming personality. And when we first started doing this, I remember her telling Justin that she didn't really feel like she had a niche or a role in what we were doing. And it wasn't until pretty recent that we were really... There was this one week in particular, I think we were super busy. Like, we met with Big D and the Kids Table, Suburban Legends, the Bouncing Souls, and then we had, like...
Me Without You.
Yeah, Me Without You. Like, we were just slammed. And it was watching his wife interact with these bands, and she was just, like, the perfect hostess.
Or their girlfriends or their wives.
Exactly, just, like, making them very, very comfortable and kind of getting that awkwardness when you first meet someone, and you're like, okay, these guys are about to interview me and stuff like that. So there's, like, that kind of awkwardness. I'm sure you've experienced that when you first meet someone about to sit down and talk.
Yeah.
But she immediately gets that out of the way for us. And so, like, by the time we actually do get to sitting down, it's like friends conversing in a conversation. And so she's been very wonderful.
That's excellent.
To talk about Chelsea, I guess.
Yeah.
Awesome. We should have brought her on today.
Well, and the thing is she always says it's kind of your thing. And she's like, I don't know what to do. It's kind of your thing. And she'll apologize when she speaks. And, we were meeting with Daisy from Foxy Shazam. And we were talking about pewter dragons. If you look at there's this 2-minute increment of this interview that we didn't delete out just because he was like, no, don't delete this. It's the most useless thing I've ever talked about. We're talking about pewter dragons. And we're like, who buys pewter dragons? And like, Daisy and I are discussing this, and all of a sudden Chelsea from out of nowhere goes, Wiccans. And both of us were like, yeah, there we go. And so she kind of got in on it and was the local Wiccan expert, interestingly enough. So she every so often she'll ask questions, and especially in the first interviews, she would kind of jump in, but she kind of says, it's your thing, and
But
she,
like we said, it's very much her niche is to
Yeah.
play that perfect host for us, to really make these bands feel comfortable or entertain their girlfriends or their wives and really provide that homey friend atmosphere. But I mean, looking around here, for those that are listening to this, I don't know if you guys know, but Chris's wife is very decorated here. I'm looking at several awards and writings about her on the wall. So going back to what we were talking about prior to starting this interview, is his wife does a lot with like farmers markets and stuff like that. And so I'm sure you agree that you need a good woman to allow you to pursue things like what you're doing and what we're doing and what she's doing. Again, not to shamelessly plug, but just because I really do dig this, like, you got to check it out. Sorry, Clementine, and her awards. So
we work with. I work at the Salt Lake Chamber of Commerce, and so we work a lot with the Downtown Alliance, who does a lot with the farmers market and a lot of those different things, and so they put a lot into that. Those farmers markets are really cool. So
yeah, she has a lot of fun there. And I mean, Salt Lake City, I mean, there's a lot of events, I mean, that she's been able to take part of, and then she just figured, hey, the next step is to get this shop here, and she's been grateful enough to let me podcast out of it, and she should be opened up this week here. This episode will probably be up, and she'll probably already be open. So awesome. Hopefully tomorrow, actually, she should be getting her business license and everything.
That's cool.
Well, again, congratulations, and it really is awesome. So
my wife would love this place.
People, when is she going to make men's clothes? Because you're probably sitting here, I wish you'd make me some clothes.
I actually was going to ask you that after, but actually what I was telling you was Heather from the Spring Standards, she was telling us a story that on the Twitter account, she asked the fans to go, because she's really big into thrift shopping.
Yeah.
And she's like, I want you to find the ugliest piece of clothing at this particular show in this particular city and bring it to the show, and I'll wear it. And what this one person had deemed to be the ugliest piece of clothing, she happened to love. It became one of her favorite articles of clothing. She happened to wear it in Salt Lake. That's why she was telling us the story over sushi at O'Shucks. And I was telling you, like, I think of this place, and I think, like, this is a place that she would love to come here and shop. It's very...
Looking around my wife,
yeah, feel free to, tell anybody you want about it here. I mean, honestly.
Absolutely.
Well, I mean, Maddie Diaz, when she comes back to Utah, we'll probably bring her here because she likes places like this and stuff like that. We've been very fortunate to make really good friends.
So how do bands find you guys? I mean, how does that work out? I mean, a little bit. I mean, just to,
It's at first it was us pandering to them. Like our first couple of interview requests, just like you were talking about, you would be surprised on how many people aren't willing to talk to you because they look at you like small potatoes. We're all of a sudden really busy, and we actually learned that the secret is that you have to bribe them with food. And
maybe that's
again,
what I need to do. Where's my
yeah,
food
of course.
here?
So like I tip my hat to Shucks Sushi again, Bruce Corgan. I served in the Marines with their bookkeeper, Eric Moore. He has his own accounting company that does accounting for, I think he has 6 different bars at this point. Shucks happens to be one of them. He also used to bartend for them in the past. And I called him and I told him this is kind of what we needed to be successful. And he really dug the idea of what we were doing and then talked to the owner, Bruce. And Bruce loved the idea of what we were doing, was very gracious to give us a set amount a month to provide free food for these bands.
Now where is those Shucks at? They're down. I'm going to say, aren't they down by the liquor store right down
Yeah,
there?
no,
that's not.
They're right across from the. You're thinking Simply Sushi. They're right across from
First South.
City Creek.
Okay,
So
I was going to say,
right
you like
across
how
from
I
City
associate
Creek
with the
on-
liquor store.
Yeah.
Where's the liquor store? That's where I know where it's
there
at.
it is.
If you need liquor,
What's that one I always wander to? Yeah,
if you
Simply
need
Sushi.
liquor, you can get it there. I mean, it's a unique idea where it's a split. So the left-hand side, as you come into it, is an Irish bar, and the right-hand side is the sushi bar, and you can cross obviously between the two. But the bands have absolutely loved it. It has this great environment there.
I didn't like sushi until I started to eat there.
Yeah.
I honestly have never really been a sushi fan, and now I will crave sushi.
That's excellent. Well, maybe I need to get them on the podcast and talk with them.
Yeah,
They would absolutely
they're
do it.
awesome.
But
He has 2 other establishments up in Park City. One that's right next to, I don't know if it's still, I think Harrio's is gone. I don't know what it is now. It's like
I think they renamed it.
downtown Park City, I think is what it's called. I don't know. I don't go to Park City very
yeah,
often.
Park City's another one of those. It's kind of separate. It
Well,
keeps
we have-
itself separate from.
You have
from here.
Egyptian. Park City Live is more dance music. And they bring in a lot of shows that are dance music. But and then the Egyptian Theater, which Perry's Egyptian Theater is amazing.
That's Ogden. Egyptian Theater is just Park City.
Okay, never mind then. Park City is just Egyptian Theater. I always get
Perry's
those two
Egyptian Theater is up in Ogden.
Okay, well, the Egyptian Theater in Park City brings a lot of really cool...
But Perry's Egyptian Theater in Ogden's really sweet too.
They just had Jake Chimbayashi or whatever, the ukulele player, which is way cool. But it's one of those things, people I just don't think they know. Unless they're looking for that in particular.
Yeah.
You know what you're going to get when you go to Kilby Court. You know what you're going to get when you go to... Like, the more I've got involved in this, the more I know. If I know a band's coming through, I know most likely where they're going to play based on what I know about the band. You know, who's going to play the Complex compared to the Depot, compared to in the venue, compared to Urban Lounge, Kilby Court. Velour. You know, you kind
Mojos.
Yeah, and you kind of...
White Sound.
And so the more you get into it, the more you realize that each venue kind of...
Has their niche.
Exactly. And so... I mean, and it doesn't need to be like that. Usually just kind of as numbers. But, like, there's a lot of places, people that play at Kilby Court, that you wonder why Kilby Court. And it's because it's all ages. Yeah. And that's, I mean, you can fit more than 200 people. And so they will play Kilby Court. Or you have bands, you know, a lot of the guys from Doomtree and stuff will come through and play Kilby Court and Urban Lounge. Because they know they draw a big enough crowd. They don't want to play a bigger place. And so they will play 2 separate shows. One for all ages and one for 21 and up. And the bands that have figured this out will then... go to, or the fans a lot of times will go to both shows, and so, or they'll make one ticket good for both shows or whatever it might be, and so.
That's the beautiful thing about Kilby Court, though, is it's very nostalgic. I have so many memories from there growing up as a kid.
Yeah.
One in particular was seeing Death Cab for Cutie at an extremely early age.
I believe I was at the same show.
Yeah, I was a little kid, and I didn't know. I just thought I was cool because I was going to a concert. I wasn't a fan by any means. I was barely conceiving music at that point. And but as I grew older and I was in high school, and I remember going to see, when I was into that scene at the time, a band, Armor for Sleep, and Say Anything was opening for them, and I was standing right next to the singer of Armor for Sleep. And as a high school student, like, to be able to talk to that person that you admire while watching another band who then became big, and then you think back on that, it's very nostalgic. So every time I go to Kilby Court, I often think of those fond memories. But since then, I've created multiple memories of that from that venue and everything.
It reminds me of DV8. Once again, Taking Back Sunday. From over the mic, he said, the first time we played here, it was just up the street in this club. I don't even know if it's there anymore. DV8 burnt down, a decade ago?
Yeah.
First time I ever saw Taking Back Sunday was them, The Used, and the Blood Brothers. And I was 15.
Wow.
And I think I was one of the only people at that show that had been to Taking Back Sunday for almost every single time that they've ever played in Utah. And so it's just, I mean, and we miss those all ages kind of venues. And so it's good that we do have Kilby Court. I've met Will Sartain and I've met Lance Saunders, and they're good guys. Mike Sartain, his brother's a really good guy. You know, they run Post Fontaine and S&S, and they're very involved with it. And there's a lot of the music scene that wouldn't exist without, you know, Lance and Will. And so a lot of people have no idea really who runs all of it. They just, you know, see the bands coming, and there's so much more to everything that goes on.
To give a quick shout out to the promoters, I mean, if it wasn't for United Concerts bringing in the very large bill shows,
The Kimbras. And
Mumford's and Sons and things like that. But, you know, you have United Concerts, you have Post Fontaine, you have The Collective, you have S&S, you have Utah Concerts, you have Velour, who does their own, and same with Mojos in the basement up in Ogden, and Y Sound that does their own and stuff like that. There are a lot of people working very hard, just like you talked about, that deserve the spotlight, which is why you have a podcast like this. So if you're listening to this and you haven't done so already, like, definitely subscribe to Chris's podcast, because I thought, from my initial impression, and as I've listened to them, he's done an amazing thing by showcasing those who do bring a unique niche to have pride in our city and the great things that you should be prideful about, and make sure that they get their credit and their spotlight, which not a lot of people are doing that for the little guy these days.
Thank you.
Of course.
It's awesome. And so that's, the music scene. I don't even remember the question that was asked. I just got to remember to breathe. I'm
no, you guys are
how
doing
long
great.
have I been talking?
You guys have been awesome to have on the show. I really appreciate it. And
again, thank you so much. I mean,
you know, I've learned a lot from you guys even about a lot of local bands. And I'll kind of wrap it up here. I'll list the Facebook site on I try to list all the links to get in touch with you guys on the podcast website, iamsaltlake.com. You guys are on.
Check it out.
Yeah.
Please.
Thank you. Instagram, Twitter, Facebook.
Yep.
Your main website, projectslc.com.
So anywhere else that we are is just whatever that is. Facebook/Project SLC, Instagram/Project SLC, YouTube/Project SLC.
YouTube, okay, excellent.
The YouTube, we've got a couple interviews up there. We're on SoundCloud. That's where you can find, if you don't want us to post them or you don't want to go to the website, all of our interviews are on SoundCloud, soundcloud.com/Project SLC. We're getting a Pinterest. We're getting Imager, however it's pronounced. I mean,
not familiar with that one.
Yeah, so they just load pictures. It's like a Flickr.
Oh, okay.
But I mean, and then you can just started a Pinterest for the moms.
Yeah. Well, you know what I love about what you guys do, and I wish more businesses and I wish more local, whoever, would take advantage of all the free social media.
Yeah.
Yep.
You know, there's so many businesses, they start a Twitter and then they post one or two and then they just leave it alone. You know, or same thing with Facebook. You try to send them a message and it's like, oh, I never checked that. It's like, you got to use all these free resources. They're at your fingertips.
Oh yeah.
Use them.
It's the day and age we live in, and if you're not capitalizing on that, then you need to rethink your business model.
The question was, how do people find us?
Yeah,
that's what it was.
Yeah.
So we have our website. You can email us through there. We've had people contact us on Twitter. We've had people that find our interviews that are also with record studios that will say, hey, we've worked with these people. We're interested in what you do. Our band is coming through. We'd like you to hear them. We have relatives of bands on Facebook that say, hey, have you heard these guys? We have, Captives just approached us. We had the Arcadians approach us. We've had Cliffs approach us. And these are all local bands that have just said, they email us or they post on our wall their video. And, that's perfectly fine. There's a lot of places that will delete stuff off or places that don't like you doing that. But, I mean, there's bands that we've never heard of until they approach us. Because there are so many local bands and there are so many things going on that they either email us from the site or they will contact us on Facebook. And those, or even direct messages on Twitter will work. So,
Excellent.
Real quick, we just got to thank Mitch Shepard.
Yeah.
He's our graphic designer. He's probably wanted to kill Justin and I.
Yeah, poor guy. He has to draw the things that we come up with. And I'm a very creative person, but I can't put anything on paper.
So it all comes out of your mind.
Yeah, and so I'm like, I've got this idea, and you need to do this, and this is coming here, and there's a monster, and he's like, how am I supposed to draw that? And I'm like, no, telepathically, just pick this up.
Yeah.
And so his wife is pregnant with their second kid, and he's still taking the time to do our graphics and
that's
to
why
deal
he
with
couldn't
us.
be here tonight, but we definitely have to thank him and make sure that he gets his well-deserved respect because, well, one, I owe him a great deal because when I joined the Marines, he was my very first fire team leader that I ever had, and he kind of
He's your daddy.
He took me under his wing and protected me until he left me and to fend for myself. I was a big boy at that point, but he's done a lot for Project SLC. He's very much a part of this project as Justin and I, and unfortunately he couldn't be here, but we want to make sure that he got his proper credit. It's the same with Brian Lee, who's our web developer, who's just been an extremely busy guy. He plays in 2 local bands, and then also does recording, and then he has his job and all these other things and stuff like that. So we just want to let those listening know that there are 2 other counterparts to us who couldn't be here, but they are very much a part of us. We apologize for the unorganized. Basically, we were thinking out loud here with you.
You were great. You guys were great.
But for those listening to this, you can kind of see where we were coming from and be very curious and excited to see on how this is actually going to become concrete in the future. But Chris, again, thank you so much for having us. We're very, very thankful.
No, and what I'd like to, down the road, maybe a few months down the road or beginning of the new year, bring you back on and touch base and it's kind of what I want to create with this is just this constant community and watching people grow and succeed.
For sure.
Well,
same thing with my wife. Here she was in the first interview. She didn't even know she was going to have this store, and then boom, she has a store, and and then I'm going to bring her on, and hey, how can you help out business? So, anyways, anything else you guys want to add or mention?
We'd like to thank you at I Am Salt Lake. We'll post it all on there.
Excellent.
And then we would love to come back when we get ready to launch a Kickstarter and all of that. So
I'd love to bring you guys back.
Please subscribe. I found them relatively easy. I just got on iTunes and put I Am Salt Lake in the search and was able to subscribe and download them all right there. And then Chris mentioned earlier, IamSaltLake.com, correct?
That's where I did it. That's where I listed all of them.
Yeah,
And,
you can listen to
also-
all of them there, and then as well as
He's got a lot of episodes, and so for me it was really nice to download and put them on my iPod and listen while I drive, which is where I get a lot of my chance to listen to audio and stuff. But if you're listening to this, also please support Chris as well.
Thank you.
If you listen to it, you're already
Yeah,
supporting
yeah.
Chris.
Yeah,
So-
it is-
So
yeah.
when you listen to this from our website, realize how much
we're talking about those
Yeah.
coming from the Project SLC supporting crowd to please make sure that they extend their good kindness to him as well and support him and his wife again at
Sorry, Clementine.
Clementine. Ladies.
Ladies.
I don't know how many of you actually follow Project SLC, but
There's enough of them.
I feel like we have enough for us to plug that. There are some gorgeous clothing here.
Fellas, come buy it for your girlfriends and your wives.
Exactly. So,
Well, thank you.
I'm sure Chris will have all the information as to where to come and check this shop out and stuff.
Yeah.
But it really is very cool. So
Excellent. Well, thank you very much.
Of course.
And we will leave it. Seriously, what a great what a great couple of guys those guys are. So thanks a lot, Project SLC. Hop over to iamsaltlake.com. That's the podcast website. I'm going to go ahead and list all the links to connect with them, their Facebook, their Twitter, everything they mentioned. So seriously, check them out. They're doing a lot of putting a lot of time and effort into making some change here in Salt Lake City. So anyways, that's going to do it here for another episode of the I Am Salt Lake podcast. If you like what I do, if you like the project that I'm doing here, if you like the podcast, feel free to hit that donate button on the right-hand side of the screen at iamsaltlake.com and throw us a couple bucks because it helps out keep the project going. It helps out with gas money and bandwidth and website hosting and all of that. And subscribe to us on iTunes because that means a lot to me. And if you are a business, please get in touch because I want to talk to you and I want to help give you the exposure that you deserve because after all, Salt Lake City is an awesome city and there's a lot of people out there that deserve the exposure and recognition. So anyways, until next time, Salt Lake City, my name is Chris Hollifield. This is the I Am Salt Lake podcast. Thank you so much for your support. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you for everybody that shows an interest. Get in touch. We'll talk to you later. Have a good night.